Hello, and welcome to the Manifestor Only podcast. Today, I have 1-3 Ego Manifestor Adrienne. Welcome so much, Adrienne.
Thanks so much for having me, Jessica. It's really a pleasure to be here, and I'm so excited for this conversation.
Me too. And I would love it if you could kick us off by introducing yourself in whatever way feels the most natural to you.
So, of course, I'm Adrienne. As stated, I'm a 1-3 ego manifester. I am the co-creator of Manifestors Global, which is it's something that's been changing over the years, but what we do is curate experiences for manifestor women. So that's kind of been something that I've created, but otherwise, I'm a creative person. I've really started to acknowledge the fact that in some ways I'm an artist. And even though I don't necessarily make visual art, I'm a creator, as I think most manifestors are.
Ah, I love that so much because I believe we can all recognize ourselves in that role of creator in some way, shape, or form. And would love to hear, how did you find human design? How did that come into your world? Like, what's your story?
So yeah, this story, I've told it a few times, and I call it's like a three-word story, but then of course I'll elaborate. But it was one inquisitive idiot. So there was a dude, right? Apparently, he had found out about human design from someone who's very knowledgeable. He was a generator, this guy, and he had my astrology chart previously. And one day I came to visit him, and he told me, "Hey, you're a manifester." And I'm like, "Okay, well, what does that mean?" Because even at the time, I wasn't even that deep into astrology. I was very much into my previous life. And so he starts to tell me things about what it means to be a manifester and what it means to be a generator. And his initial idea was that we were supposed to have sex because I didn't have a sacral center and he had a sacral center. He was going to give me something. And I'm like, I don't think I want what you're going to give me. You can keep that. And no, thank you. But but it did somehow spark me to want to know more. Um, it was really interesting because right around that same time, I met my very best friend, she's an emotional manifester. She's on the cross of Eden. Her name's Makiba Ellington. I love that woman with my soul. And um, I met her. That guy had a Facebook group. I met her in that group, and shortly after attending basically a mushroom talk at her house by a world-renowned lecturer. It was so crazy. Only a manifester would have that. Someone who is paid lots of money to go and speak around the world, like in her living room, giving us. I remember when the guy started his lecture, I was like, this is like a college lecture. What is happening here? And only later did I find out that she was a manifester, but I felt this kindred feeling with her almost instantly. Like I hugged her way too long. It was very awkward, but not for us. We were in it. And I realized I'm like, I'm hugging this stranger and I'm like, I love you. And it was just a manifester meeting another manifester and we were in the right place together. So we both had learned from this guy that we were manifestors. We both very early on figured out that he didn't know anything, and what he was telling us wasn't quite correct. So we got together, started studying together, buying books. I invested so much money, and there were some really expensive books at that time because there wasn't very much on the internet. For me, it's been over 10 years since I found human design. So we were, what was online was very volatile, meaning that you could find a website today, and maybe because funds got lost or I don't know what would happen, but we were in the middle of a rave ABC course that shut off in the middle. And so it was just like this hunger started. It sucked us in, and we were down the rabbit hole. And I mean, really, human design did so many things in my life. It completely shook me up because at that time I worked a regular corporate job. for all intent and purposes, anybody seeing me would have seen a very straight-laced, normal person. Um, I was eclectic, but it unleashed me and allowed me to become more myself. And my best friend Makiba, she I call her my Gandalf because, in the story of my life, she wasn't the one that brought me human design, but she was the one that helped me go on that side quest and really start my experiment. So that's how I found human design.
Gorgeous. I love that. You got a bestie on the whole ride with that.
Yeah.
Oh, gorgeous. Um, I feel like, that segues very nicely into one of the topics that we talked about earlier, which is this narrative of the manifestor being the lone wolf. I know you got some words to say, so just going to let you say them.
So I called it a myth because I had to examine a lot of things as I was coming into human design. So I came from just a little bit more background about myself. Like I was in technology, so like my work, my previous career was in information technology. I came from a family of scientists and very analytical people. So, and I actually came out of a family that was very steeped in the energy of the channel of community, which is a projected channel, but it's very family oriented. And I only have one channel. It's the 4521. Sometimes it's called the money line or the tribe leader. But I grew up in a tribe. I grew up being taken care of by people caring about me, caring about my well-being, and kind of saving my ass a lot. So when I came to the idea in human design that um we were supposed to be lone wolves, well, I understood it, meaning that there are times when I do go on, like I call them a side quest. I have to go by myself. There are certain things that I do by myself, but none of us are really alone. You know, this the illusion is separation. So the question then becomes, as manifestors, how do we reconcile the fact that we are solitary actors, but we are solitary actors in a Maya that's populated by other people, other animals, other things. We're all here. So I don't think of myself as a lone wolf, but I do think of myself, if we talk about lone wolves. First of all, lone wolves are very rare in nature. So whoever came up with that analogy, I mean, I understand what they were trying to say, but lone wolves are rare. They're usually only because they're unhealthy or something happened in the pack where they got, you know, separated from the pack. It's not permanent either. Lone wolves come back to packs. But I don't think of myself as a wolf. Um, I remember when I was learning about human design, Ra would talk about kind of this, it's almost like a farm analogy. And if we're on a farm and everybody's the herd, they're the sheep, which, I don't really appreciate that as much, but actually sheep are beautiful animals. Um, what ends up happening is I have to have a place on the farm. Wolves don't have a place on the farm. Wolves get shot if they come near where the farm is. So I'm not here to just get shot down when I get close to other people in the Maya. That is not what's happening. And I thought, like, well, what am I on the farm? And I realized, like, to my daughter, she looks at this guy on YouTube and he has a farm and he has this beautiful big white herding dog. And I was like, oh, we're like sheep dogs. We have a job, but our job isn't to mingle with the herd constantly. The farmer says, hey, today I'm moving the herd from this pasture to that pasture. Hey, dog, come help get those people over there. So we come to impact the herd and move them in a direction. We don't harm them. And yes, the sheep do have an interesting relationship with sheepdogs because they are canine. So they smell wolf-like. So the sheep aren't 100% comfortable with the sheepdog, but they're not being harmed by the sheepdog. Okay.
I love
And yeah, and then the very last part of it is that we move the herd and then we leave them alone. So most of the time on a farm, the sheepdog is actually maybe not in a kennel, but like away from the herd. And that's us occupying the edges and only moving when this inner drive to go somewhere, or the farmer, our lover, the program, tells us to go. So that's kind of the analogy I like to take on. We're not lone wolf. Sometimes we have to be alone, but we're more like sheepdogs.
I've never heard that before. I think that is so cool. I'm gonna have to remember to reference you when I use that because it's a beautiful way to reframe that. And I think this really speaks to what you do create in this world, which is communities in different ways, shapes, or form. And I would love to hear more about, like, I know you've done a retreat with only manifestors. I know you're doing some kind of gathering of human design professionals. Like, what are these communities that you create? And how does this analogy of the farm come into play when you're creating this communities? Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm a 1-3, so I'm really just curious. And I really have started to embrace the fact that even as I'm nearing 50, I'm not far from 50, that yeah, I'm getting older, but I am not getting necessarily that much more mature in the head. Like I'm a fun time because I realize I'm just a lot of these things I'm doing as a curiosity. And it's always kind of a question like, what if? And so what if is oftentimes a door that I'm walking through. It could be because of that empty I have a undefined, of course, head and ajna. And my undefined head, I do have the gate 64 defined in there. It does love to ask questions. What if? And I do also have the Gate of the Gatherer, the 45, which is part of my channel. I have it twice in my design in very, I would say, important places. Now, all of your placements in your chart are important, but these are two places that really mean a lot to me. So my conscious moon and down in my unconscious Jupiter. So these are places where um like I can see where gathering people together has the potential to bring a lot of information. So yes, resources and all of that to other people, but also information for me. I'd like to see. I do like to know. I like to see what's going on. And it's really interesting when I tell people prior to finding human design, I had not gathered anybody into any kind of group, not even once.
Wow.
Not even once. I had not made any kinds of groups. I had not tried to bring people together for events or parties. So for me, I think learning my design, and learning human design and actually kind of chasing the knowledge, so doing the 1-3 thing, right? Actually pushed me into starting to make communities. The very first community I ever made was the Mana Sisters community. And I made the Mana Sisters community for very selfish reasons. So, and I tell people this all the time. I'm a 1-3. I am not here doing it for you. I am kinda because I'm the tribal leader, but I'm doing it for us. So if I'm doing it for you, trust me, I'm doing it for me too. Or, something's in it for me. But I made this community because I was in there was a larger manifestor group. And at the time, there were some strange dynamics inside that group. Again, we're talking um, quite a few years ago. So the composition of that group now looks far different. But at the time, it was very male centric, male dominated. And if I would come in and ask questions, not only just male, but also overwhelmingly European. So not just white people, like Europeans, which actually is a very interesting cultural difference to say an American or a different type of um, a person who's maybe comes from an English speaking country, but is not from Europe. Um, and I found myself being blockaded from information. And then I was finding out that there was information being traded like on a black market, that it was so crazy. It was like drama. I had a very beautiful Facebook friend. I haven't seen her in years, so I have no idea what's going on with her, but Her name is Marissa. Marissa was a manifestor also on the cross of tension. Beautiful woman. Very much their type. I was like not their type. So they would try to get her in the inbox and she'd go because they would end up giving her parts of the human design library. So we went, we collaborated on a crazy mission. I said, okay, I'm going to create this. I'm creating Mana Sisters. You go get the library. And she did. She had a dude who was ready to fly her to Vienna. He had bought the tickets and had given her the library. She was like, I don't think I'm coming. And I'm like, wow. So we were, it was like adventure and also like a little bit of, yeah, just a whole bunch of adventure. And I really wanted the library. Um, with that cross of tension, having the 48 be my conscious son. I always feel like that's like the librarian. I really wanted to have the depth of information so that I could satisfy myself. And then we shared it with the community. So for me, communities are about like distributing knowledge, learning, and figuring out how to get resources. And I don't know. I can't tell you that like human design told me that and then I started doing it, but it kind of worked that way. It was more like in my pursuit of trying to learn human design, I started doing my design. If that makes if that makes any sense.
It does. Ah, such a cool story. Thank you for sharing that. I think, and I want to go back to what you said earlier about meeting this manifestor friend of yours and just giving them that hug and you now creating these events for manifestors. I don't have any adult manifestor people in my life, but I have two manifestor godsons, age 7 and 3. So little meanie mannies running around.
Yeah.
But I did have the experience of being in the same corner of a room with 7 manifestors when we were doing this in aura experience at my conference earlier this year. And that power of standing with 7 other closed aura manifestors who are just like that power and feeling like I could just cry from sitting with people who know what it's like. And I would love for you to speak to what has that creation of these retreats, what has it brought to your life, but also what are the ripple effects that you've seen from it?
Wow, that's a really good question. First, I would say that um I kind of knew that it would be powerful because even when you're meeting virtually, there is a great power to being with manifestors. There's just something else and you just feel it and it feels amazing. When we had the retreat, there were 20 of us total on a mountain away from everyone. On land that's traditionally occupied by other people, but they gave us space. Mm. The woman who was running the retreat, like her husband and her son, and they all like left. They went to Utah. So we were like, but we did have one generator on the property who cared for us through nourishment. And other than that, we had a sacral detox and just to be with one another. It was overwhelmingly beautiful and still. Almost like it's really interesting. I had theorized that how it would feel, but the true feeling of it surpassed even what I thought could be. And so the ripple effects is so I'm an ego manifester. Sometimes I do things once. It's 1-3. And it's really, I mean, it's part of my design. If you ever look at my design, you'll see why sometimes I just do it once. And it's always funny when people tell me, "Oh, I'll see you next time." I'm like, I don't know that this will happen again. You have you can see in the future because I don't. Um, but I was able to pass this on to a manifestor sister, Nova Ohm. So she's now doing that, which means I remember like the way we described it was like sometimes I have to birth a thing. And that's how I feel like when I'm in my creation mode, I'm incubating and creating a thing. And if I incubate and create something, it's like a baby. And if it's this baby is born and I can pass it to someone else and they can take care of that baby, then, I feel comfortable. And I don't actually have um, I don't miss that particular retreat. I kind of knew, I'm like, I don't know that I'll be back up here, but I just knew that letting that pass through me, that it was teaching me so many things, simply putting it together, you know, doing the gathering, connecting with manifestors first virtually and then in person. Um, what it has shown me is a baseline or a difference of how it can be around people who are manifestors. And the rest of the time, most of us are in aura with other types. And the feeling is different. And being able to feel that difference um, really gave a lot of validity to the experiment itself. Because when you first get to human design, no matter who you are, it's your mind meeting information. Your mind is meeting information. There are things that you've been experiencing, but first you have to learn a little bit about what's what. And then as you start to experiment and then see that in your experience, it gets validated through your living. And that was one of those really giant validations of I'm a manifester. And it is so important for me to treat myself energetically, to respect my energy. Energetic respect is really very important for me, to myself, not expecting it to be given to me because no one knows how to treat your aura as a manifester. You make space for it. And that was what that retreat showed me is I can make space for it and it is proper. It's good for me to make the space for it.
I'm just looking at your design while you're speaking. And, like you said earlier, you're one channel, leaving 7 centers undefined. And so, has there been a process around, of course, we talk about the closed aura, but the closed aura also, can get engulfed into other people's energies. Um, and being so open, have you noticed how after human design showed you this openness physically, like you said, fed your mind this information that you have all this openness? Has that changed how you interact with people?
It has. And I will say that the deconditioning process is a spiral, right? So I've clearly been through at least 7 years of it, but I recognize that a life is like walking on a spiral path or a spiral staircase. You'll see the same view from a different level. And so for me, it all started with radical experimentation. And that was what was so important about the Mana Sisters community. I basically started it with a cohort of women who some were just a little bit more experienced in human design than me. Because at the time, I think when I started Manifestors, I was like maybe a couple years in to studying, but it was just my friend and I. And being able to hear the stories of other manifestors and then be in virtual connection with them, being able to, um, understand deeper what it did for me was it gave me I got a framework for the deconditioning process. And for me, it was like, okay, I'm going to be radical with this and try things that can seem strange because I think that's part of deconditioning. Deconditioning isn't about doing weird things for the sake of doing weird things. It's about putting yourself into a different behavior pattern so you interrupt what you were trained or programmed to do previously. Right. So I had to do some pattern interrupts. So, many people talk about, oh, manifestor might be a people pleaser. Well, I was never a people pleaser. I have 51 in my South Node. I was a firecracker. And I told you I came out of a family, they all the 4037. I came out of a family of all defined egos, generators. I didn't know undefined ego. So I literally thought everyone was a bull like me. These generators were nobody, you couldn't tell anybody in my household what to do. So I think I grew up energetically respectful of even generators. I didn't expect this, but I got so much support and love from them. So I had that. So one of my favorite first experiments. And I recently wrote like 40 pages. I think I'm writing a book. That's another thing. Like people tell you inform and then do something. I just think that's ridiculous because sometimes I'm doing something before I know it. I didn't know I was writing a book till I had written a quarter of a book. And I'm like, oh wait, I guess I'm writing a book. Um, so okay, my first one of my first experiments was I had to come up with this. I'm like, well, how do I get out of this sacral, you know, melange? We're in this sacral energy. And what's one of the easiest things that you can identify with the sacral is that the sacral beings are bouncing energy back and forth between them. Like, do you want to go to the store? I don't know. Do you want to go to the store? You want to do this? Want to do that? It's always this yes and no volley of questions that manifestors find to be sometimes so inane for us. It's like this is not the conversation I want to have. So um I decided to kind of attack questions. And I did research. I was like, what are questions doing? What is a question for? What it got very 1-3. Okay. Got very first line. But what I came up with is that um questions are a call for energy. And there's like these basic variety of questions: who, what, when, where, and why. Who, what, when, and where are easy to answer. These are like 1 point questions. They don't really hurt, right? This is something easy. This is it's almost nothing unless you're being interrupted to be asked. And then it's like, why are you asking? But if you're not being interrupted, this is a low stakes, low energy question. How and why? Well, how, if those others are like 5 point questions, how would be more like 100 point question. And if how is 100 point question, why is like a 500 point question. So I devised this crazy ass experiment, and I want to thank there is a relationship therapist named Al Turtle who kind of gave me this idea. He's really elderly. I mean, I keep meaning to go talk to this guy because anyway. So whenever anyone would ask me a how or why question, I'd give them this answer. I am not answering how or why questions for the month of August. If you still want to know in September, come ask me then. So I was scared to death to do this because it's weird. That's weird. That's weird. Who does that?
I don't know. You
Nobody
do.
does that. It was the weird. It was, and so it was just like, again, not being weird for the sake of being weird, but being weird for the sake of the experiment. So I started doing that. And I did it for a month just to feel how my energy felt. I had this enormous reserve of energy that I had not wasted. Because it's really interesting how and why questions oftentimes lead to more questions. They lead to questioning your motivations. It's really an opening of a door to break your boundaries. And I decided that, like, after that month of trying that, especially first off, people looked at me a little strange, but they were intrigued. And that's kind of one of those things I wrote in this book I'm writing, which is um, do weird shit. It makes you enigmatic. So do your extreme experimentation. Like, you know, I had to be very thoughtful about it though. It was very thoughtfully done. And no one said, like, no one resisted and no one followed up,
Mm,
which let me know that sometimes the how and the why question are a curiosity for the moment, but curiosity is not a good enough reason for me to open up my mind space to someone. It's just not. So it really gave me possession of my mental space. It's mine. Versus, I think quite frequently, the people pleaser, the over explainer, these are all the things that we become as manifestors. All of those are just bad conditioning around how open you should be to the other person. People with open and enveloping auras should be like that. They have that's their bread and butter. I'm not like that. And I
mm.
had to embrace it. And that experiment showed me so much. I had so much energy.
That is such a cool experiment to have done. I love that so much. Um, and I think, you know, Ra tells us to go out and experiment with it to prove it right or wrong, right?
Mhm.
And of course, it's like you said earlier, we see things that validate the system for us. And it truly is in that step of being radical about something or, you know, that process of looking back on, oh, I fucked up. I didn't listen to my authority. I didn't use my strategy. And just a side note, I agree. I don't inform before I started to create, but I inform when you're ready to see what I've created.
Yeah.
Um, End of discussion.
That's
It's
it.
like for us, it's like it's strategy and authority, but it's really authority than strategy.
Yeah.
So, um, God, where was I going with this? There's a helicopter that is taking my attention away. Oh gosh, this has not happened so far in the podcast. What was I saying before that? Strategy and authority. Oh yeah, then we're looking back and seeing that I didn't use my strategy or I didn't use my authority. I wasn't actually listening to that inner voice.
Yeah.
And on that note, I would love to hear your experience with being this ego driven authority. And what does that look like for you? Just tell me about your experiments with it and experience with it.
I think that authority is irrational. So for me, it's so funny because okay, just a little background, and I swear it's going to come back to this, but I didn't grow up with religion. I think I was like the last kid, and no one took me to church. And by the time I was, by the time I got into like the age where I could remember, no one was going to church anymore. They just, I guess they had stopped. Everybody had just become themselves in their mundane ways. And so I didn't have a sense of like this idea of God as an authority, right? Because I think that the idea of God as an authority, that there's some force out there that will bless you, that will punish you, that will do these things, is actually useful in the experiment. But I didn't have that reference point because in a lot of ways, I told somebody I started listening to Christian music like 4 years ago because when I think about God, now I think about my inner authority. Like, there's songs like, I trust in you, oh Lord. Yeah, I trust in my authority. But how did I get here? Um, and I'm telling you, I didn't grow up with that music. It's just amazing to me what the experiment will do to you. So for me, first off, just understanding that authority is irrational, which means that it doesn't have to make sense. It is under no obligation to make sense. Um, Authority, quite frequently for me, is coming through body stuff. And I think I was a pretty disembodied person. Like um, I wasn't feeling feelings deeply, um, prior to like getting more deeply into my experiment and actually being able to experience rage because I had not even experienced rage in adulthood. Um, so for me, the authority, first, I do start with strategy though. I start with strategy as in, um, where is the impetus for this action coming from? If it's coming from inside or outside. And if it's coming from inside, is it inside because of a reaction to something or is it just inside? Right. And it's not that I can't react to things. I just think that reaction and response are completely different. I think a response, I've explained it to sacral people as response is like, you have this well of energy and then someone peels open the door on it and that energy is free to complete a thing. Response is something that I don't natively have all the time. Something out there says, "Hey, I need your energy," and then all of a sudden, a well of energy opens up from the ether inside of me. I don't have that. I'm not a generator. So for me, it's like really understanding like is where is this coming from, and then it's a lot of mystery in there. For me, I've heard like, oh, the ego, the will to do things. And I'm like, it is that I want to do something. I do. I've done things and I just wanted to do it. And if someone asked me why, that would have been an impossible question to ask. And that's why I would probably tell them I'm not answering why questions this month. Um, it's just, I want to do it. And that's like it. And not just I want to do it. So that's not even quite it. Because like I told you, I started writing a book unbeknownst to me. I got the news, and then I'm like, hey guys, I think I'm writing a book. There's a team of manifestors who are editing it right now because I was like, you guys, I just had to write my friends. I'm like, friends, um, I wrote something, and think you want to look at it because it's about manifestors, and they were like, well, sure. So I really am at the point in my journey where I don't actually analyze why I'm doing something. I kind of just am looking at myself doing it like, oh, look at you doing that. And what it has also done is I'm a 1-3. And I tell people all the time, like the third line is gonna fuck up. The third line is not here for perfection. We're here to bump into things. And my kryptonite then becomes shame. My body isn't ashamed of anything I've ever done. My mind can be ashamed though. And for me, also understanding that all the people around us, most people are, in their various degrees of sleep. They can feel your vulnerabilities. So recently, I did something and my mind wants to say it's fucked up. But my mind's been watching my experiment for a while, and my mind's like, maybe that's what needed to happen. Maybe that was the right thing that happened because I don't feel anything my body is not feeling any type of encumbrance around it. And I'm like, wait. And this is where you start to get it. This is why we need communities, because I've had periods like this in my experiment where I call it like it gets surreal. You fall out of normal reality and shit gets weird. You see things differently. According to your design, you have, different things that could be happening to you very specially. Like your right body, right yeah, you're right on the body side.
Right mind,
Yeah.
right body. Yeah.
Yeah, right mind, right body. Okay, so you're right on that side. You're a different kind of person. There's going to be things that you experience. I'm left on that side. I won't have that experience, but I'm telling you, we all get weird experiences tailored specifically for us, for our own little journey. The thing about having a community is sometimes the program is allowing you to have a companion on the path so they can validate when you say, did you just see that shit? And they're like, yeah, no, you were not crazy.
Yeah.
I saw it too. Because I've had to have someone validate like, I've been in a place when I was in a place once, and we were in a local business incubator, and we were having an in-person thing. So I'm in this room. There's 20 people in this room. And I already have picked a place kind of on the edge near my own little door. There's another door into the room, but everybody's kind of gathered on the other side of the room, and I've left space for myself. And I'm not going to tell the entire story. I was not being disruptive or a bad Manny. I was being a nice manifester, you guys. And at one point in that time there, I had the only 3 men that were in the room, because most of the people in the room were women, were at my table trying to make me agree and or behave. And I was like, so my daughter was there. She's a projector, also on the cross of tension. And I was like, she's like, yeah, no, I saw that. Don't, she's like, that was just the aura. And I was like, ooh, this is amazing. It's amazing to witness. And it really, what it does is it, one, helps you to forgive people very quickly. They don't actually have, they don't have any sense of it. And with that ability to forgive others quickly, I've also had to develop the ability to forgive myself very quickly because I'm a 1-3. I'm gonna mess it up. Something's gonna get messed up. Don't worry about it. We just keep going. Guess what? That moment is over. We just, if I harm someone, I am, of course, apologetic. But I've also become a lot more conscious about the fact that generators in a lot of ways are like what traps a generator is fear, obligation, and guilt. Okay. And that's kind of what traps everyone. Fear being thrown away from the tribe, the obligation that, you owe me some energy. And then guilt, you didn't live up to my expectation. And guilt and shame, hold hands. And I've really come to the conclusion that if I'm to live my manifestor life, that I cannot um wrap myself in those clothes or else I'll be chronically uncomfortable. And to be a chronically uncomfortable manifester is to have no energy, to be disturbed, and to constantly have to apologize for who you are and how you are. And yeah, no, I'm done. I'm done with that. That costs a lot of energy. It's very expensive.
Yes. While you're talking, I have this question of the combo between being, of course, this ego driven manifester, but also on the cross of tension. So your aura is bringing the tension with the repelling and with the ego on top of it. And then you have this cross of tension on top of that. How does that, yeah, here I come with the how questions. How does that play out?
Oh yeah, no, and I love it. So especially amongst manifestors, I love how questions because this is really illuminating. So what I will tell you is this: all auras are polar, which means they are both, they have the ability to both be repelling and to be attractive. So in reality, my my aura is very attractive. It brings all the boys to the yard. It brings people in of all kinds. That's part of my gathering too, but I think that's with every manifester, we have, it's polar. Typically it turns repelling when I have something to do. That bubbled up, now I got something to do. Um so that's that part. The cross of tension, once I really started to learn more about my particular brand of the cross of tension, my cross of tension starts in the quarter of duality, which is about connection. Um, it's about connection. It is about being able to give other people resources, but also have boundaries. So I'm really about my ability to understand my capacity, and that's kind of on the personality side. And then on the body side, it is about being able to have the grit to stick with something, but also to endure and to facilitate renewal and change. So the cross of tension is like, you know, it finds the knots. And when you're rubbing a knot out, it hurts. It hurts. But when the knot is released, then you're able to move more freely. So I feel that's kind of been my way of operating with people. So I am pressing on the tender place. I'm constantly pressing people in their tender places. And then with the ego, the tender place, quite often, because 70% of people are not defined in the ego, the tender place is their self-worth. And either their self-worth or how they value others. I recently had a kind of an incident where someone who is far richer and far more influential than me showed me that they had that tender spot. And I'm like, oh, honey, you don't have to prove to me that I mean, you, I don't need to see your P&L. I don't need to see your profit and loss sheets. I don't need to see any of that. I believe that yeah, I've seen you. I know you. We all do. But that's that tender spot. And the thing about it is, pressing the tender spot doesn't mean that someone will love me for helping them to release that knot. What it means is they're aware of the tender spot and there is an opportunity for them to work on that. That's it, you
Mm.
know? And I opened that door and they're walking through it, whether they can help it, so what they do on the other side of the threshold is up to them.
Mm.
And this is part of the game of being about being a manifester is what people do with your impact is out of your hands. Impact is uncontrollable and viral. It grows legs and it walks away. And unlike a projector, most times they're not coming back to tell you that something changed for them because of you. So interestingly enough, yes, I am an ego manifester. I have zero connection about feeling responsible for other people's um, growth or any of that stuff. Like if something I've done has impacted someone and I see it, as much as I know, like the human part of me, the mental part of me wants to be included in that. But my true self understands I came in like the wind or a force of nature. I came, I did my thing, I got out. And if I can really reconcile myself with that rhythm of I came, I did my stuff, and then I walked on, then I can be a much more at peace manifester versus um trying to stay in the fray for longer than I could. I can't be welcome in the fray for too long. This impacting aura is meant to like deliver a punch and then move back. If press, you keep pressing, they stop noticing. It stops being appreciated.
Mhm.
And even if it's appreciated negatively, the fact is, we are strong medicine. I tell people this all the time. If you take a heroic dose of mushrooms on a Monday, you're going to see other worlds. If you take it on Tuesday, you might get some body sensations. By the time you get to Friday, if you take 5 grams of mushrooms every day, you could have just gotten mushrooms from the grocery store. They're not going to impact you that way. So understanding ourselves as a form of medicine. Ah.
It's absolutely gorgeous. And I mean, I'm biased because my husband is also a 1-3 cross of tension. I adore the way that 48.1 expresses itself. And just listening to the way are able to logically explain things and really bring that depth, the keynote to this conversation. It's just I'm loving listening to you. And I think where I want to take this conversation is a little bit, okay, so you've created these communities, you've created this, which we haven't spent too much time talking about, which maybe you can do at the end or a little bit later, but the My Spiro community as well. And again, I'm always looking at your design, and what pops out to me is like, okay, well, this person also has two undefined and one completely open awareness centers. And all of these fantastic fears that lie and the anxieties and all that stuff. And how has that not self-expression come into play for you? And how have these fears expressed themselves for you? And especially then during that creation process, if that makes sense.
Well, I think that so there's a few things. I always tell people I have zero idea where I'm going. I am just taking a step and trusting that there will be something to step on. And in reality, that's what we all do because physics works every day and the floor stays solid and we don't fall through. So I don't know what's going on, having no awareness centers for me has been like walking blind. Um, and also like I have a right viewpoint. I really feel like I'm a visionary. I see the future in glimpses that's completely open eyes and it'll show me stuff. And I'm like, what is and I'm like, okay, but I don't see the through line of how to get from here to there. And I realized that the through line, one, is energetic. Energetic for me is people. So the right people start showing up.
Mhm.
There's a person who showed up, a manifesting generator. I asked him to do something for me and he did it. It was a thing that otherwise I would have had to pay for. And I was like, wait, what is going on here? Who are you, sir? And then I realized this other projector popped up, and those two people, that projector and that manifesting generator, kind of have a relationship, but they haven't solidified. I'm like, what is happening? Are y'all coalescing right in my face? So for me, again, it's now it's all about the energy of the people around me. It's not me. I opened the door. There needs to be a professional platform. Something else is going to have to happen, but y'all know I don't take care of babies. I give babies to other people. I don't take care of these babies. I give them to other people. Speaking of that, like I have a daughter. She's a 26-year-old projector on the cross of tension. And I didn't abandon her. We were together the whole time, but my family took care of her. That was part of the support I got. So I'm like, I tell you guys, I don't really take care of babies. And we have a fantastic relationship. She's my business partner. So all of that to say that my blindness is actually a form of justice. It's blindfold because I'm not really out here. I can't do it from my own what I want to do. And then my daughter and I, when we connect, we still have she has a completely open G center. So I have that gate 7, which is funny because we're meeting during the gate 7 being in the sky on my day.
Fun.
Okay. The 7.3. Don't play with me.
Love
The
it.
7, the anarchist. So which means that I have been given permission in a lot of ways to do it differently. And in a lot of ways, I am looking for that 31. I'm looking for that 31 to connect to the I would call it the executioner, the person, the real leader, which means I'm here to and it's part of my design and all the things that I have been wading through learning myself, is I'm here to um crown other people as authorities over what they have authority over, right? So when we're talking about this guy, he's a computer programmer. He's not me, thank goodness. I'm not a computer programmer. I was in technology, but not that part. And knowing that these other people are actually holding the keys, and that if I'm a responsible tribe leader, what I'm going to do is actually assemble the right people versus trying to um subjugate people to my will. That's over. The nine-centered way is not the seven-centered way is going away and the nine-centered way is coming on board. I've seen the future. Therefore, I'm going to do some things that look a little future focused. It looks weird. I'm going to do weird shit. And so when I look at people who are doing things the old way and they want to tell me how successful that is, I'm like, yes, of course it works. Of course it is working right now. But in 20 years, that's going to not work. And it's not because I believe in human design. It's because I also am a student of business. I also watch the news. I also am looking at life. And I see that people are changing their relationship with work. They're changing their relationship with consuming. Some people are doubling down on it, but some people are backing away. We're really seeing some changes. And I want to be part of that revolution. The people who understand that the true wealth is, for me, like the feeling of peace. And my feeling of peace doesn't come from overconsumption. As a matter of fact, for me, I don't want to have a lot of things to take care of. Told you, I give away babies. I mean, like I just, I'm good with like some house plants. Just it's future focused. So every once in a while, like I have this blindfold on, and every once in a while I get a little peek. I can like look underneath and see a little something, and that's it. I don't get the plan. The plan comes in people. It's in people form. So with these the my right viewpoint, which is my only right variable, I'm looking for people. I'm looking for the right people.
Yeah, you
And
need motivation, right?
yes.
Makes sense.
Mhm. Yeah.
I feel like what I'm really getting out from talking to you, of course, I feel like all kinds of different types are going to be listening to this podcast, but especially for the manifestors that are listening, to rebel against the narrative of this needing to go yourself, not needing a community. And I think even though both you and I are tribal in the sense that I have the 49 19 and you of course have that 2145, but I think this extends to the other non-tribal manifestors as well. I think that there's something really valuable, like you were talking about earlier, where you get to share your experiences with people. And I feel like that's where I've gotten a lot out of this podcast, is like I'm getting to hear all these beautiful experiences from people. And when you're talking about this way of creating and really just doing that in the blind, doing that, just knowing and just trusting, just free falling, it sounds like, at least, and just like then suddenly there's an MG to pull you up and be like, hey, you need some help there, or your daughter projector who can help you guide your projects. And it's a beautiful visual for me to have, of your process, and of course being able to point to different similarities in my process. And I hope the people that are listening are getting that as well. And I'm just looking at the list of like things that I wanted to talk to you about. Um, and you mentioned this, you're in this phase now of like just existentially being, just
Yeah.
existing. I would
Yeah.
love to hear more about that.
What I'm doing now is, there have been, first I say again, deconditioning is a spiral and it doesn't stop because you don't even really understand how deep it goes, until you see this. You're going to see your old enemies in new clothes, right? So, um, it's just you're constantly refining yourself through the process. And so for me, the refinement of my process was that I was always so afraid of that, when that forward movement by myself. So I have to balance it out, because if you look at my chart, there's this amount of tribal stuff that's there. And then I have places where there are breaks in my chart, like, pause for the benefit of others. And then there is this like, ba, 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 boom, you know how to go. So recognizing in myself and in my energetic expression when I can go full speed, mostly alone. And then when I need to link arms with other people and be like, okay, are we all ready? Okay, you guys, let's go. So being able to feel that difference, and energetically, what it feels like is the, like, this, I call it like stakes. Is it high stakes? Is it low stakes? Low stakes things are things that just kind of involve me and my own reputation. Because I also, as a 1-3, I feel like, I can mess up. I will mess up. But people's memories aren't that long. So unless you're holding a grudge against me forever, other people are going to forget. So I'm pretty safe. Like, there's a lot of people on the planet. So having gotten myself out of that kind of shame spiral, it allows me to do some things and move very quickly. So last Friday, I woke up and I was like, man, I want to have a manifestor party. I've never done this ever. And it's just it's like a house party, but online. And I have a vision for it. I have zero idea if it's going to really work. I'm doing it tomorrow. So just understand. And wait, but the crazy part is I've got like 45 people who've signed up for it. Who paid. And I was like, wait, what? It's happening. So basically, I came up with the concept on a Friday. The party's happening Thursday. That means there was like 6 days between concept and Like people had to purchase, and I still haven't really 100% all the way formed. I got special guests coming. It's just a very crazy scene when you can just get swept up in something like that. So that's what I mean about the existential nature of things. Like it was low stakes. It didn't like no one is harmed by me moving this fast. The people who had joined me will just be there, and the people who didn't join me, it doesn't, it doesn't matter. And that's kind of that space that I'm in now, where I can play with that. I can play with a very fast action, crazy thing. Like, what the heck am I doing? I sent out a terrible email this morning. Not terrible, but like it was like a template. I was like, oops, sorry, send the right email. Felt nothing. And I was like, okay, I'm getting in the zone because things are going to happen. I mean, I'll just blame Mercury retrograde or whatever and and go with it. So for me, that's kind of like what I meant by that.
Mm.
And before we move on, I do want to say a little something about what we were talking about just before this, which was being tribal, and then maybe manifestors who have like, a lot more individual circuitry. What I will say is, I think that what is lost on many people is the relationships between the circuits. Okay. The tribe is like stabilizes small, medium groups, small to mid-sized groups. The collective stabilizes large groups like nations or, countries. And the individual channel stabilizes individuals, and allows them through their personal mutation process. Those three things are related to one another. They don't actually function without the other. Like the collective and the tribe, they have tension between them. The individual and the tribe have tension. The individual and the collect, everybody's got the tension. The tension is what makes us push and find our uniqueness. And those individual people, tribes need individuals. Tribes need individuals. If you do not have an individual you don't have individuals in your tribe doesn't get a direction. Ooh. Okay. The 5125 channel. Hello, y'all. Like, just rock with me here. All the rest of those channels to the ego are tribal. That one is individual. And that's what gives the tribe a direction. So if you do not have individuals, you don't have the weirdo, you don't have the person that just kind of goes a little left when everybody else is going right. We need those people because what they do is they bring something back to the tribe that the tribe can then incorporate. And everybody's wearing what that individual was wearing. And now the individual is like, oh my God, I'm a total hipster. I was doing it before you guys. Now I got to go to the wild and go out into the wildlands and bring back something different. And that's how I feel about those.
Beautifully said, and very, very important piece of the human design puzzle. I think we forget that as well, that circuitry is here to figure it out.
Yeah.
And I think the more we can become aware of that, the easier it will also be to collaborate when we're creating, not only on the whole generator, manifestor, projector, reflector stage, but also, okay, let's look at the circuitry stage as well. And I'm married to a pure individual as well on the cross attention. So yeah, it's intense. I love it. I joke and say I found the closest thing to a manifestor that I could find.
Yeah. And he's a generator?
Yeah, he's an MG.
Yeah.
14218.
Oh, that's fun. That's fun. Yeah, no, those are channels I appreciate.
Yes.
My partner, I also have a partner who is a manifesting generator. And it's really funny because my one and only channel, what I had found was in my dating life that especially because of just the conditioning of men and women, I'm in the US. So like men and women in the US, the standard conditioning, if someone compromises my one and only channel, and I'm trying to have romance with that person, we have issues. Um, but he has the whole channel just like me. That's my manifesting generator. And then all his other channels are generated channels, and he's literally like he's such a powerful person. He's got the 515 and the 3457
Oh my gosh.
and the 4521. So so he we laugh because in our household, if you look at our family penta, it's just weird because that's my daughter's dad, and they're 9 and 0 when you connect them. So there's only so much they can be with each other. And oh, I'm so sorry about this. Okay, stop it. All right. Oh, my phone. Okay, I apologize.
Do you have an animal or something?
No, I have a phone that won't shut up. I'm so sorry. Okay.
I thought I heard you say ow. I thought, is someone fighting you?
No, nothing's about to be. Okay, there we go. I don't know. This thing's gonna
Sorry.
like not stopping me. Okay, so I don't know how to work that phone. Anyway, this powerful being, and my, we have a daughter. Our daughter's a projector, and I tell people all the time, I'm like, I'm in a house full of bullies. Like people are like, well, isn't your energy strong? I'm like, yeah, but have you seen this guy? And have you seen her, this projector in particular? Like we are, but it's all laughs at this point. It wasn't necessarily always this way, but my daughter has been into human design almost 10 years now. So she has really embraced herself as a projector and she respects her energy. And it's this is our family. This is how we are. But boy, it's very powerful personalities. Yeah.
For me, human design almost becomes useless unless I'm using it for that level of understanding other people and those around me.
Yeah.
But then I'm a 6'2", so it might mean a little bit more to me.
Well, this is what my daughter said. She's also a 1-3, and then her dad's a 6'3". So, like I said, we're a fun bunch. She said this to me just last night. She's like, I don't really look at human design anymore. She's kind of living her design. She's like, but every time I look at it, it knows me so well. And it is something that for me, it unlocked um new levels of relating, because for me, for most of my adult life, I was pretty much single. So even though I have my partner, that's my daughter's father, we broke up for like 20 years.
Oh,
So how we got back together is amazing. But I arrived back into his life, and um we're both at this point people who have some resolutions to make around relating to people. And I had to make some decisions early on. He's a 6'3". We're really getting close to the point where he was going to get off the roof, but I had to let him know he was on the roof. I'm like, and then I had to let him know, not only are you on the roof, but you're going through your Uranus opposition pretty much. And that's why your life is feeling like it's flushed down the toilet. And he's like, what's going on? And I'm like, okay, now. So I was able to explain that to him. But I kept it like, he doesn't want the jargon. He just is like, what's going on? And so I had to grow into, and this is where I've really learned to appreciate and respect sacral energy. Because we've heard things like, oh, manifestors are entitled, or come across one way or another. So I had to understand that the way we communicate with other people um is important, especially other types. So when I communicate with generators, I do tend to communicate differently with them than I do with manifestors. Partially because we will we communicate with each other and don't necessarily have a lot of question marks at the end. It's like, oh, blah 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 blah. It's just a thing that's going on, and I'm kind of telling you. And for them, there's an interpretation of that, partially that either they have this energy store that is waiting to open up to do something. So it's like, are you telling me to do something? What's going on? So I had to really clean up my language when speaking with my generator partner. And I helped him to learn how to communicate with me better. So I didn't say things like, don't ask me questions, because I think that, again, that's back to that, like, I'm commanding you to speak a certain way. That's kind of crazy. I did make it into jokes. And we laugh, like I said, we laugh a lot in our household. So it's just like, so even now he's all like, he talks about me like, don't tell her what to do. And I'm like, great. Now I got the generators around me running interference about so they're protecting me from anybody who thinks they're gonna tell me what to do. Don't tell her what to do. Um and giving me space, giving me time. I had to explain to him about having an undefined root, which he also has. But I'm like, I don't operate under pressure that way. And he's a pressure cooker because even without that root, he's got the 515 and the 3457. It's just, it's pressure. Okay. It is pressure. And so we've learned in this relationship how to be better with each other. And I tell people all the time, all of my family relationships are made of compromises, right? Even though he and I share that one channel, I compromise all of his other channels. Well, his other two channels. And then I also bridge his split. That place where I bridge his split let me know that we were going to be able to be in this relationship because, hey, we're talking about the gate 7. I bridge him with my gate 7. He already has a defined G center, but he has the 31 and he has it in 2 places and he has it in detriment. And I would tell you the 31 in detriment just says, don't tell me what to do. Like, I'm not going. Like, I remember one time thinking, like, man, he could really use a coach. And I saw that placement. I was like, he would never listen to a coach. But he listens to me. Now he's on the cross of defiance, which means he listens to me in a weird way, which means I've gotten to the point. This is how I work with him and this is why, like, you have to learn your people. I got to know the people around me. I can't know all the generators, but that one, oh, I know him. And all I'll do is give him an idea. I'll give him a little story. I'll give him and I don't belabor it. And then I just walk away from it. Seed is planted. It may come up 3 months from now, 9 months from, I don't know. But he'll be like, what would be a really good idea? And I'm like, what? Do tell. I think I'm going to get this awning replaced for the house. And I'm like, think you should.
I
Think you
have the
should.
exact same way of dealing with my husband because he's not only a purely individual 1-3 stubborn AF MG, but he also has all the deaf gates. So it's like I can't. I can put it out there, and if he picks it up, he picks it up, and I will not most likely hear, "Oh, thank you so much for planting that seed." Nope, and I'm okay. I don't need the validation.
Nope, I got the thing. I just like, oh, the thing got here. Good. We got the thing. So he's been one of my greatest teachers. I tell him that all the time. The 6'3" who was like living as a 3'3" far beyond the time he was supposed to be because I guess 6'3" can climb down off the roof when they want to because they always have the third line body. And the fact that he's alive, and you hear that story, like the 6'3" that survived, they made it. If you make it you're making it to 50, boy, did you make it? And he is like, I'm seeing him turn into the role model after being hell on wheels. This man has a quad. He has 4 placements in Scorpio.
Oh my.
He's he's been my dark teacher, my darkness teacher, because my Plutos are also in the same gate as my sun. So Pluto, both unconscious and conscious, of course, conjunct my sun. So it's really funny because I remember someone was like, you're a Libra, but why are you always wearing black? And you're just so dark and you seem so forceful. And I realized, oh, no, it's because I have like Pluto. The Dark Lord is on my sun, man. so I have a tendency to like dark things. And I like that dark man. He's dark. And he could be scary to people, but he's not scary to me because there's been work that has been done over this last 4 years together that if anybody had told me this was possible, I would have shamed them right there. I would have been like, no, those are lies. That's not even possible. That guy, I've been knowing this guy for well, our daughter is 20, about to turn 27. I've known him like 29 years. He, I had thrown him out of my life so hard that I didn't know anything about him. Okay. So literally when I get back into his life and I'm learning things about him and learning him, knowing him, and then having to work through, I would say our mutual traumas and like starting to talk about it and not necessarily like just talking about trauma, but recognizing that it's there. And then to have him be, like I said, he's turning into the role model in my face, right in my eyes. And I'm just like, I'm a little jealous. I'm like, wait, you're growing up. And I really am the chaos monster. I'm the baby. That's the 1-3. I feel like I'm like, oh, I get to be a trash panda forever. And you're going to be like, you're so respectable. He is. He's like, I'm just watching him become distinguished. And I'm like, hell on wheels, 30 years. Now look at you, a role model. Oh, it's really nice. But also,
That must be so interesting to witness that and it's so close with your partner.
yeah.
Um, I see the frustration in my 1-3, MG, where it's just like we used to third line buddy all the time. And now I'm getting this subjective kind of view on things and I'm, aloof AF. And he's just like, okay, this is a change. This is something new.
What happened to our trash panda
Yeah.
days? I tell people all the time the 1-3 is a trash panda, and it's like, well, someone's like, don't call yourself that. I'm like, no, you have zero idea. I am so ready to go and play around in the muck. I'm pretty convinced I can rinse this off. I'll be back.
Exactly. Oh, I'm feeling very like rounded in what I wanted to ask you and talk to you about. And I'm really glad that we went into this partner's place as well. Because really, for me, all human design comes down to is like respect for yourself and respect for others. And it's through the knowledge. But I would love to ask if there's anything that you would like to speak to that we haven't talked about today, or is there anything you would like to bring to the surface that we didn't get to touch on?
I would just like to reiterate that um, although it is very seductive to just dive so far into the knowledge and just learning all the things, um, come up for a practical break and do some type of experimentation. Um, you know, a good place to start. I have 7 open centers. Somebody's like, oh, I'm like, yeah, I had to go there. I had to go into those open centers and really acknowledge what's happening there, what can happen there, being experimental, paying attention, because I think that it's all we talk about like self-respect, respect of the other, and all of that is predicated on awareness. You've got to be paying attention, and for me, all of my openness has taught me um that we're not separate. The illusion of separation is true. We are constantly getting stuff from around us. It's in us. We're also broadcasting. And, the best thing you can do as a manifester, especially, is, you know, radically run towards your experiment and cultivate that inner peace. Because what I have found is I have the ability to face some of the things that used to disrupt me previously don't, which means I have a steady hand. Whether I'm wielding a hug or a sword, my hand will be steady. Whether I'm creating or destroying, my hand will be steady. Because I'm not taken over by fear and anger and all those things that would potentially make my authority be silent. Now it's clear, and it really feels like a lack of resistance to my body. I think that's it.
Perfect ending. So anybody who's listening and they're like drawn to you and would like to, get to know you or watch you like I do, or work with you, where can they find you and how can people work with you? And please also let us in on, because we didn't get to speak too much about My Spiro. What
Oh.
is that? Yeah.
So, well, I'll talk about my Spirio first. My Spirio is well, whatever it is changing, but the concept is that it's a place where you can find human design professionals and people who are doing services with human design in mind. I have a feeling that that's going to morph and change because really what we're doing is first of all gathering the community and then figuring out what the needs are. That's kind of my MO. And it's partly because of my design. Like what do these people need? I don't know that they really need a directory. I don't think we need a directory. I think we need something else. So we'll see what that comes into. And that's just myspirio.com, um myspirio.com. And you can find me. The best place to find me is actually on Facebook. There is a group called Manifestors and a page called Manifestors. Please follow the Facebook page. I'm one of the weird people where my Facebook page is apparently where people follow me. It's one of the places people follow me, but otherwise we have a group that's attached to that page. You can find me there. And our website is manifestors.com. It's just MANI sisters.com.
Well, I'll be sure to put all the links in the show notes. And I'm so grateful that you wanted to be a part of this whole project that I don't know what's going to be and look like at the end either. You know, it's like we're just playing the game of following those surges of energy and pulses. So thank you again so much for being here. And yeah.
Thanks so much for having me. Peace.